at LSU in December, and then I'll let Robbie Bowen introduce himself.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Robbie Bowen. I'm the director of pre-health programs for the College of Science here at LSU. So thanks for joining us.
So yeah, really glad you guys are here. I hope this can be beneficial to you. We're not going to have every question answered you'll ever have, right? But I do want to let you guys know we're going to give an overview on how do you write your personal statement, and also I do want to let you know you can ask questions at any point. So don't feel like you have to wait to the end to ask questions. You could put them in the chat throughout the presentation. We would rather do this in person, but it's virtual, and so it's not going to be as interactive as maybe it would be or could be in other times. But I do want to let you guys know we are recording this, and so we are going to send it out to everyone in the review committee this year. We also will send out my PowerPoint. So really glad you're here. Definitely pay attention, ask questions when you need to, and we are going to get started. So I'm going to share my screen. So let me go ahead and do that. All right. So can everyone see my screen okay? Robbie, you can see it okay?
Yep.
All right. So here we are, writing your personal statement for medical, dental, optometry school. And I want to start out with this question, and I encourage you to make it interactive, that you can, put any answers to this question in the chat that you have, or you can even unmute yourself. And this question: why do professional schools require personal statements? So if you'd like to put something in the chat or unmute yourself and talk, you're more than welcome to. And while y'all are waiting, the reason I ask this question is because it's good to pause and ask this. A lot of you guys are, working hard in your classes. You're getting your clinical experience. You're trying to do everything right, and you come across this personal statement you need to write. And many of you are science minded, and you want to know what's the right answer to the personal statement, right? The MCAT score, DAT score you need to get, the GPA you need to get. But when it comes to personal statement, it's maybe not as science math based. It's a little more artsy, right? There's no right answer. Everyone's personal statement is going to be unique. And so I am asking this question because I want us to really think about why before we talk about the what. So, I got a few.
Yeah, I'll read you what's come in so far. So to see if you can communicate ideas clearly and can clearly articulate why you want to go into the medical field, to understand who you are and why you want to go into the profession that you do, to get to know the applicant more than just academically, to get an idea of, to get to know a little more about us in a more personal way rather than a list of accomplishments, work, and grades in our application, to get an idea of who you are and what makes you stand out aside from grades. And they add more of a human aspect to the applicants.
Awesome. So, you guys really are coming in with some great understanding and motivation about this personal statement, right? You said a lot of good things. I heard that word why do you want to go into this field? That word why is important. Talking about getting to know you more than academically. We're going to talk about that you'll have the same exact GPA as other people, but this is a place to stand out. You guys talked about getting to know you personally, and that's exactly the human aspect. It's exactly, you're not a number, you're not your MCAT or DAT or OAT score, you're unique. And so that's just how I wanted to start this, right, is to realize that there's no one like you, and also what you think about going in your profession is pretty important. And they want to know not just can you do a good job at this profession, but they also want to know, why do you want to do this? Are you going in it for the right reasons? See, obviously you can think of some of those wrong reasons why, someone would want to go into one of these fields, but I definitely want to be thinking about the right reason. And so, there we go. This is what we're going to cover tonight. I know a lot of you guys will be going to another meeting at 6:30 with the AED or with the Pre-Dent Society, but these are going to be the four main things we're going to cover, just to kind of give you an overview of what we're going to look at. So the first thing, we're just going to talk about where to begin with your personal statement. Where do you start? Many of you maybe haven't started yet, and that's okay. The next thing we're going to talk about the contents of the personal statement, what's actually in that personal statement. The third one is improvement, because we all know you can't take your first draft. You need to get it better. And finally, we're going to talk about things to avoid. So you don't need to write any of these down. I'm gonna have each of these on a specific slide. But like I said, thank you guys for answering my question right in the chat, and feel free at any point to write another question in the chat as we go. So that's definitely a feature. So this is the first thing I want to talk about, right? It's personal statement. We've already talked about, some of the reasons why it's required, but we want to start where to begin, right? You may be applying to medical school, dental school, optometry school this summer, and you have a lot going on. You haven't really even thought about the personal statement yet, and so you're asking, where do I even start? I don't even know what this is. And so that's why I wanted just to start with a few ideas here. And the first one would just be brainstorming. And that's going to be, we're going to talk about this in a second, but answering the question, I'm going to call it. A few other things: researching the field, not knowing your field well, not just who you are, interviewing, um, you know, dentists, physicians, right now, interviewing your family and friends to find out more about yourself and what are things unique about you. Journaling about your experiences, with your involvement, with your working in the field, reflecting upon your life, upon your time in college, and then finally writing outlines, and writing, first drafts. Getting that started. You're not going to write this in a day. It's not a sit down and cram thing, and so we really want to encourage you guys, obviously, after this workshop, that your next step would be to write that outline, to brainstorm, to begin with working on this, but then knowing that it's going to be more of a journey than it is a one thing you do very quickly. So definitely want to talk about this. I'm calling it the question tonight. Okay. And this is the question: why do you want to be a fill in the blank, dentist, doctor, optometrist? Why do you want to do that? And I highlighted in red the you and the vocation, because those are both two very important things to focus on when you're writing your personal statement. The first one I mentioned is you. I already said this, but there's nobody like you. Your personal statement in your life, there never will be a life exactly like yours, and there never has been a life exactly like yours. And that's the advantage here. You should be excited about writing a personal statement, because this is a moment where you can stand out. You can't make your MCAT score, your DAT score look any better. It's a number, but your personal statement is a moment for you to shine, for you to show what makes you special, why they should choose you. Because if we're honest, medical school, dental schools, they do not need you, but you have to make them want you. And that's what this is all about, because there's plenty of people applying. They're not applying to you and waiting on you. You're waiting on them. You're applying to them. They have limited amount of spots, and you need to stand out. And so I'm calling this the question, because if you haven't thought about this recently, it's going to be very important when it comes to your personal statement. Because if you have the good grades and the experience, they know you can be a doctor or dentist, but they want to know, should you be one, right? Are you the type of person that should be, should have the scalpel in your hand, should be operating on people, should be, doing that root canal, or should they give that spot to somebody else? And so I have this short sentence here just for you to focus on, and it's this: make it clear that you understand the field of medicine, dentistry, optometry, and then demonstrate why you would be a good candidate to work and expand that field. Show what sets you apart and why. And the reason I emphasize the field here is because, some people, they really haven't had that hands-on experience, right? Maybe you want to go into a certain field because of a TV show you watched, or because of, what you've heard about from a friend. But you've really got to be honest with yourself and ask, have you gotten that, one-on-one, that actual experience in the clinical setting? Have you worked in that dental office? Have you worked in a hospital? Because there's not everything is glorious about these jobs, right? There's a bunch of reasons why you'd want to go to medical or dental optometry school, but there's also a lot of challenges. And so they want to know that you know what you're getting yourself into, that you're aware of the stress and the responsibility, but also that you're willing to take on that stress and responsibility because of that. So just want to pause here and and help you to think about this, and also to let you know that you need to spend some time just over the next few weeks brainstorming, going on a walk, thinking more, asking, talking to people, that sort of thing. So that's my first part, is just where to begin, right? It's definitely with this question right here. It's with that brainstorming. It's with that looking up more about the field to see what it's really like. It's about interviewing the physicians, the dentists. It's about journaling about your time interacting with patients, reflecting, and then writing those outlines, writing those first drafts. Because, like I said, a personal statement, it's got to be something that you work on a little bit over time. It's not a part of the DAT or the MCAT, and so they're not expecting there to be any typos, and they're expecting it to be great because you have time to really get others' opinions and really help make it well. So I want to pause here. This is just my first part about where to begin, to see if we have any questions about where to begin, where to start. All right, well, we'll keep going. So the next part is the content, right? Starting is a little bit easy because you just get to dream and maybe write up some outline. But you're asking, okay, I'm going to start. I'm going to write my outline for my personal statement. But what should my outline, or what should my personal statement actually contain for the professional school? So just a few things I have here to think about would be an opening hook, central theme, share a story, organized paragraph, clear transition, answer the question. And so that first one there, the opening hook, we all have to realize that the admissions committee is reading thousands of applications. And think about the last time you picked up a newspaper. Do you typically pick up a newspaper and you read every single article? No. You usually read the headlines, you read the first sentences, and if one sounds really interesting to you, you go read that article, and then you skim the rest. And I'm not saying that the admissions committee is going to necessarily skim your whole personal statement, but don't you want to be the personal statement that when they read that first line, they want to read the rest of it? And so the beginning of your personal statement, you've got to start strong, whether it's just a strong statement about a story you're about to open up or whatever it is. We're going to look at some examples after this. You've got to have an opening hook. Something in your personal statement's got to say, I want more. I want to get to know this person. The second part, I'm going to talk about this a little more, is a central theme. And my question here, it's a pretty easy trivia question. What is easier to catch? If I were to throw at you, or let's say toss, a baseball and a fistful of sand, which one would be easier? I hope you got the answer. The answer is a baseball. But why? The reason a baseball, and I got this from a book, so it wasn't my idea, but the reason a baseball is a lot easier to catch is because it's all bound together. It's one thing. And so if you toss to me a baseball, I just have to grab it, right? If you throw at me a fistful of sand, there's a bunch of individual particles, and I'm going to try to catch what I can. I'm probably going to drop a lot of it. That's how writing and communication is. If they're not asking for personal statements, a bunch of individual sentences about what you've done. That's maybe a resume, right? You're going to fill that out in your application. A personal statement's got to flow. It's got to have a central theme, one thing that's wrapped around, whether it's perseverance or compassion or hard work or whatever it is about your life you want to help shine. You definitely want there to be one central theme. And that goes into sharing a story, right? You're going to want to have some sort of character development in your personal statement. You don't just want to say, look, this is how I am. You want to kind of talk a little bit about, look, here's where I was. This is what, this got me into medicine and got me interested in, and now I'm ready to do it. Or whether it's, I've always been interested in medicine, but I had these experiences and it really affirmed for me. Or I went through these hard times and I was able to overcome them. And so therefore, I believe I can overcome the challenges that being a physician has for me. And we're going to talk a little bit about this as we look at examples, but, you don't just want to have stats, right? You want to have some sort of story that captures people, that gets them. And it doesn't, we're going to see an example of where there's maybe one overarching story and maybe your story of your life with, small moments, but that's just something that's got to be part of it. The next thing is organized paragraphs, right? Everyone wants to know what, just like tonight I organized for you guys, we have 4 points. we're going to talk about these 4 points. Let me go through them. You want your personal statement to be like that. You don't want it just to be random. You want there to be organized paragraphs that flow and support your main paragraph. And then clear transitions, right? You want it to flow together, just like a great newspaper article. You don't want it to be choppy. You want it to flow. And finally, you want to answer the question, which we talked about before. Why do you want to be a blank? And so I have this slide up here that's kind of going over what I just mentioned to you guys. But writing your statement, right? I mentioned you need that good hook, and we're going to see an example of that. Something that first line that just makes you want to read more. You need that theme. How do you describe your personal statement in one word, in one sentence? You want to share that story and have the structured paragraphs and transitions. And so I just gave you an example right here, right? A central theme might be perseverance. And so therefore you share a story about how, you persevered through this hard time, and, it was very challenging, and you're more specific about this time, but how, you want to be a physician because obviously want to use medicine to help others persevere through their difficult ailments and injuries that they have. And you need to connect it to medicine, dentistry one way, right? And so when it comes to your intro, body, and conclusion, you've got to have a strong intro that grabs the students. But also, you're really going to need those body paragraphs and that conclusion that's strong as well, because just as much as a opening paragraph is important, so is a closing, right? If those who read your personal statement are going to remember the first words and the last words the most, and you don't want them to skim the middle. And so that's going to be a big thing, is ending with that strong conclusion. And finally, I mentioned that that flow and consistency. It's a personal statement, not personal statements. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later. But you don't need to regurgitate what your resume says. If your resume says a bunch of great things about you, you don't need to say, I did all these things. You then need to talk about how doing those things made you a better person or will prepare you for the dental field, that sort of thing. And so you want them to find out more than just your application shares. You want it to be a quote unquote double click into your life, to get to know you more, get to know your personality. So that's my first 2 points, right? How do we start? And it's by that brainstorming, it's by that interviewing, it's by asking that question why you want to be a physician, but then actually starting. And I mentioned just some of the contents, right? Writing, answering that question of why you want to be that physician, that dentist, but also making sure that it's interesting and you share more than is on your resume, and you have this theme, and you share a story about your life and have some character development in it. So that was a lot of information there. I do want to pause once again, just in case someone has a question in regard to the personal statement, the contents, where to begin.
Nothing in the chat yet. So anytime you have a question, you can type it in or you can unmute yourself. Okay, first, Matt, how do I incorporate bad grades into the content?
Awesome question. You're going to hear and you're going to read on some websites sometimes that you want to bring up bad things in your personal statement. You might hear that. And that may or may not be a great idea. And so we're going to talk about this a little later, but I'm glad you asked that question, because I'll give you a good example of when it might be a good time to talk about something quote unquote bad in personal statement. So I had a friend, he applied to a professional school and he had gotten a DUI, a DWI. And so, of course, when he applied to that professional school, he knew that when they pulled that background check, they're going to see that he had that DUI, DWI. And if he didn't bring it up at all, maybe they might ask the question, man, is this guy trying to hide this from us? That sort of thing. So it's, of course, to your personal discretion whether to bring this up. He decided to reveal it, right? But you always want to reveal it in an offensive way, I say, not a defensive way. So you wouldn't want to be like, yeah, I did this, but I really am a good person, and make excuses. But you could do it in a positive way, talking about how you learned from your experience. So, he would share, look, I made a terrible mistake, my freshman year when I got this DUI. However, since then, I've learned so much from it. I volunteered with Students Against Drunk Driving, and I've learned that, every decision can affect others. And so you can kind of see there, you never want to be making excuses, for bad things, but it may be to your advantage if something came up that you could spin it in the right way. So you definitely want to ask feedback from people, see if it sounds like something that um, is making you look better because they're going to find it anyway, or it sounds like, what, they're going to see that, but overall your GPA is fine. So with grades, okay, if you withdrew from a whole semester and they're going to see that because you had a family death or something, you could maybe incorporate that. But you got a C minus in a class, and you're upset about that. I mean, you don't really want to make an excuse. Oh, well, that was a hard professor. You just want to work hard in your other classes and bring up that GPA. But I guess, Robbie, would you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that's right. I think you always, honesty is always the best policy, but you always want it framed in what I learned from it, what I changed so that it didn't happen again, and how I've moved forward and moved on from it. So you don't want to leave that as dwelling on it. I'm obsessing over it. It happened. I faced it head on. I did what I needed to do, and it hasn't happened again.
Right. So looks like we have
What
another question.
Yes. How strict should we be in keeping the same verb tense throughout?
Yeah, that is a great English question, right? If you find you said I used to do this, I did that, you know, I think personally it's just got to make sense, right? I wouldn't, it might be appropriate to talk about the past that you used to do something and now you are doing something and you will do something. So it's just got to make sense. I don't think you have to necessarily keep the same verb tense unless it kind of sounded awkward that you said, you used to want to be a doctor, but now you don't, So I don't know, Robbie, would you have anything to share about that?
It just needs to be the correct tense. So if you're talking about something in the past, then it would be past tense. But if you're talking about something ongoing, but switching tenses isn't a good or a bad thing. It's just it needs to be the correct tense based on what you're talking about.
But yeah, that's a great question because you're asking the right question when you're asking grammar questions because this
Yeah.
isn't just about content. It's not just about what story are you sharing. It looks really bad if you make a bunch of grammar errors because it's like, oh wow, this person sounds awesome, but they can't spell words. Or actually, you don't even need to spell. They didn't even get the help from a friend to proofread it for them. So we're going to talk about proofreading next, but you definitely do not need to take every advice on your personal statement that you get, but you definitely want to at least ask for advice from others. You do not want to do this alone. You want to, even if it's your parents looking over it, we're going to talk about who to look over, but you have time. You definitely want to proofread and do not, as Robbie's saying, you don't want to have wrong tenses make you look bad.
This is where your English instructors can come in if you still are in touch with them, or your high school English teacher. Those are good resources to kind of say, can you read over this?
That's great. So, that leads us to improvement, right? I mentioned that your personal statements need to be a little bit of a journey. It's not something that you say, oh, well, usually I cram to write my essays for English class and I get A's. Well, this is not the sort of thing to do. Guys, you all have a lot going on, with the review committee, with your classes, with MCAT, DAT. You don't need to, spend hours a day on your personal statement, but if you could spend, an hour a week for the next several weeks, you really can, help greatly improve it and be planning. And so, just a few ideas that I have for improvement is number one, rough drafts. And there's different ideas about this, but you definitely want to write, a rough draft and send it to different people and change it and get their feedback again and get other people. But as I mentioned, you do not, it's your personal statement. You're the only you. So if someone makes a suggestion and you don't like it and you don't feel like that represents you well, don't use it. If you feel like I don't want to take that advice, well, they're not the ones applying. So you've got to own your personal statement. You've got to guard it. It's your own, but definitely ask for help. Help people look into it and point out things, and then you can make the decision whether you find that helpful or not. And there's a lot of great resources I'll talk about. I talked about proofreading. Of course, that's important. And one idea to proofread it yourself is read it out loud. and read it out loud to yourself, and you'll find if it sounds goofy, or if that's one of the best things you can do. Read it out loud and record it, and then listen to it yourself and see, okay, does that flow well? Was that interesting? Was there a way I could word something better? So that would be great. And put some other resources out here, right? You can meet with the Career Center, and they'll go over your personal statement with you. They're doing a workshop as well on one. There's a communication across curriculum at LSU. They'll help work with you with writing. Just reading medical journals, reading others' personal statements. Maybe you have a friend that got into medical school 2 years ago, and you can have him send you his personal statement. You never want to copy somebody's, but you definitely could get some ideas. And interviewing, asking, as I mentioned this before, interview physicians and dentists and optometrists, but also interview your friends and family, and ask them, hey, what do you love? What's great about me? What do you feel like this personal statement captures me well? Do you feel like there's something really special about me that it's not showing? That's that kind of thing. Your family and friends, you so well, and they could be some of the greatest resources for helping you to think about something that you wouldn't have thought yourself. Have workshops and online programs as well, and I'll mention some of these, but there's definitely some great resources out there. I'm going to share some resources at the end that we have on our website, but you can even check out other colleges and other universities that offer personal statement workshops online, and study, look at different things, but you want to improve your personal statement the best you can. And so I just have a few ideas for who to ask for help from. I mentioned this already, but the first one is asking for help from someone who knows you well. And the reason that this is important for the personal statement is because you want someone to read it. Let's say it's your mom or your uncle or your best friend, and they say, why would you not include this? Like, are you kidding? You work in a research lab, and wrote your own paper. How could you not talk about publishing that paper? Or kind of the other way is like, you know what? I wouldn't really talk about that grade. Just they'll see it, but you have a good GPA besides that. Just focus on your positives. So that's good, but you also want to ask someone who doesn't know you well, because maybe, like meet with someone from the Career Center, or find a, professor or someone who could read it, or whoever, because maybe if they never met you, they'd read it and say, this is kind of missing this about you. I don't really know this about you. And that's going to be helpful. I mentioned the Olin Career Center. I mentioned communication across curriculum on online workshops. I just mentioned one university there that has one online. You could read about reading others' personal statements. Do not copy them, but if it can be helpful, be careful. It might be bad. It's like copying a test score from someone. Number one, it's cheating, but number two, they might not even be a good one. So make it your own. Read it out loud to yourself. And they also have some online programs you should check out. One I mentioned is Grammarly. It's just a program that'll help you kind of word things better. You could put your essay in there, and they'll say, hey, this was repetitive, or this was a run-on sentence. And those kind of things you wouldn't think necessarily are very important, but they notice a missed comma, a run-on sentence can make a big deal, because it shows, if you don't have those things and you have perfect grammar, that means you pay attention to detail. And guess what? As health professionals, you need to very much pay attention to detail. You can't do the surgery on the left leg instead of the right leg on accident. You can't accidentally remove the wrong tooth. You've got to be detail oriented. And that's another reason, they can't see how detail oriented you are at the MCAT, but, they very much can here. So we're about to go to our fourth point. Just want to pause once again if anyone has any questions about the improvement side.
Nothing so far.
All right. So the fourth thing before we look at some examples is things to avoid. And the reason I mention this is, I want to communicate, and this is a good communication strategy. You don't want to communicate to be understood. You want to communicate to not be misunderstood, right? And so really want to be very clear here with some of the things that could, be detriments to your personal statement. And so a few things I have here: excuses, bragging, selfish motivations, criticism, typos, procrastination, repeating your resume, passive voice. We've talked about some of these, but I'll just highlight them a little more. So excuses, like I mentioned, you don't want to be on the defensive, like, yeah, this happened, but I still am a good person. Focus on your strengths. And even if it's a weakness you got to bring up, show it as a strength. Like, I had to withdraw one semester, but I'm better for it. My criminal record has this one bad moment, but now I'll never do that again, and I'm serving. The next thing would be bragging. And, we're going to talk about this fine line between confidence and arrogance. But, the sort of statements that if somebody reads it, you've got to ask them, hey, do I sound confident? Or do I sound arrogant? If you're saying, I'm the best medical student that will ever come through, there's no one ever like me, or people say I'm the smartest person in the whole world, like that's obviously an exaggeration, but the whole point is, does it have that sort of essence, or do you say, I believe I'm a strong candidate for medical school because of my experience, background, and skills, whatever, so you want to have that that confidence, not the arrogance. Next one will be selfish motivations. I hope this goes without saying, but you've got that when you're asking that question, why do you want to be a dentist or doctor? Please don't put, well, I want to make a lot of money, or I just want someone to call me doctor, or I just want to do something really hard and this is the hardest thing I could think of. They don't, like I said, they don't need you. So they don't want someone that's motivated, number one, by these things. Yeah, of course it's a good paying job, that's fine, but that doesn't need to be the number one reason you're doing this, because there's a lot of other ways to make money besides this. Or sure, as we mentioned in our other workshops, it's a good way to help people. And this isn't necessarily on the selfish motivation thing. It's a good thing to help people, but why exactly do you want to use medicine or dentistry to help people, and not, being a teacher, or being a policeman? The next one will be criticism. These are more just anything controversial, bringing up political things that, I mean, it's the whole committee reading this, right? That maybe would make someone upset, or criticizing a certain profession, or part of the profession, or other professions, or anything. You don't want to sound like once again, an arrogant person that's putting others down. You want to talk about, um, just your strengths, who you are, no, and don't worry about those maybe political criticizing, those kind of things. Typos just goes without saying. Don't There's just no excuse for this. You should have 10 people read your personal statement, and you should never need typos after that. Procrastination, again, if you're here at our workshop, you're probably doing fine, because it's March, right? You have several months to write this thing before the applications go live. So yes, don't leave this workshop and don't think about your personal statement for 2 months. But if you set aside an hour a week, then by April you might have your personal statement done. So work ahead, and then repeating your resume. I already mentioned this, but they're reading thousands of them. They want to know more. So you don't just want to do that. And then finally, the passive voice. You may not know what this is. It's just in English. You have active voice and passive voice. Let's say you're working in a hospital. You would say, I helped many patients. And that really is an active statement, because you helped them. The passive voice is, many patients were helped by me. It just seems a little passive. And guess what? Active writing just sounds better. And so this is kind of on the same danger zone thing, but just a few things I want to highlight is, answer the right question with the right character count. Once again, goes without saying, but if the application says for you to explain why you want to be a doctor, why you want to be a dentist, don't answer something else. Or if it asks for something else, don't, and make sure it's the right character count. You might have an awesome essay, but it's over the character count, so that your conclusion gets cut off. So research that. They're different for each program. If you're applying to DO versus MD, they can be different for each of those. Yeah. Number two, make yourself not look too good or too bad. We already talked about that. And then number three, plan ahead. I mean, this is obvious things. So before I go to the next thing, once again, do we have any questions?
We do. So this question says, how would we write about a dramatic event that shaped our desire to become a health professional without it sounding over dramatic or excessive, but we want to share the importance of the event?
Great. That's a great question, right? Because you wanting to put yourself through this challenging school is not for any reason. This, going to medical school, going to dental school, optometry, it's not for the faint of heart. So you probably have some dramatic event that shaped you to do this. And so, we definitely just talk about honesty, right? You don't want to make it sound more dramatic than it is, but you don't have to make it less, right? Don't downplay it. If you were, working as an EMT and someone was literally dying, you can explain that. But if, you were working just in an outpatient clinic giving, some vaccines or something, like, it doesn't have to sound like you were in the emergency room, So honestly, make it a little dramatic sounding, but don't make it over dramatic. I just think it's a fine line, and it more just have to be, that's where the proofreading is going to come in, is saying, hey, do you think this sounds, let me share this story with you and then read this. Do you feel like this portrays it well or not? So Robbie, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think it comes down to believability and authenticity. Like when I'm reading personal statements, I can just kind of sense that this person's being authentic and real. And, um, it needs to sound like you, like it needs to sound like the way you talk and the way that you express yourself. And so sometimes people get focused on trying to use big words, or that they want their vocabulary to be flashy or whatever. And I think sometimes that comes off as over rehearsed or pre-planned. It needs to sound like you. It needs to be how you talk, how you communicate. I mean, not how you text or anything, or what don't be calling people they and all that kind of stuff, but it needs to sound like how you would tell your friend the story. So authenticity.
Great. Thanks for sharing that.
And then
Um,
one more,
okay.
would talking about wanting to help fight health disparities such as race, SES, et cetera, be okay?
Yes, I definitely think you could talk about that. Once again, with those, obviously the politic word might have made you a little nervous. I'm just talking about controversial topics, that maybe you wouldn't want to bring up, like, you know, let's just say like abortion, immigration, some things that might make people upset. But when it talks to helping people that need help, you just want to word it in the right way. You definitely can talk about this. So just make sure you're wording it in a way that's honorable, respectful. But if you have a good motivation like that, that's awesome. Just don't do something that you think half the country, would find offensive. Talk word it in a way that people will be like, you know what, that's great. This person wants to help people in this way. So, Robbie, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I think you need to back it up. Like if you say that I'm passionate about helping people who, have health disparities that they've had to face. Well, what have you done? What have you done to help people like that? So, I would assume if somebody writes that I'm going to see on their resume that they've been volunteering in a free clinic, or they've been, doing something that backs this up. So, that's I think when in the committee when we're talking, that comes up a lot. Like this person says that they love to volunteer and help people, but their resume doesn't really back that up. And so anytime you're going to say something like that, you need to show how you did it. It needs to be, that theme should be throughout your activities and experiences section. I should be able to see that what you're saying is true.
Great. That's a great point.
um you want to go on with some questions,
Yeah,
or?
yeah, keep going.
So in formal papers, contractions are normally not used. Are they also too informal for our personal statement? Can't versus cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you can go ahead if you want.
yeah, that's my pet peeve. Yeah, you need to spell it out unless you are quoting someone. If it's in a quotation of somebody said something, and obviously you want to use the vernacular that they use. But yeah, in personal statements, you don't use contractions.
Okay, that was an easy one. You
Yeah.
have any more?
One more. What are your opinions on religious topics in personal statement? Obviously, not everyone would agree, but I know for me, medical missions has had a huge part of why I want to be a doctor. How would you suggest that we go about this?
No, that stuff's great. Sharing about medical missions, and you can talk about your personal faith for sure. That's definitely, if that's important to you. That's not offensive, right? If you talk about you know medical missions is a big deal to me, or my religion is really big deal to me, or my church, whatever. That's great. The reason I mentioned the political thing is more if you made some sort of statement about that would be offensive, right? And so if you talked about a derogatory way about another religion, or that sort of thing is bad. So no, definitely, be honest, share why you got in the field. That's a great reason. Medical missions, that's awesome. Obviously, like Robbie said, if medical missions is a big deal for you, you better have that on your resume. But that's awesome. Robbie, you got any thoughts?
No, I think if your faith is a motivator and it makes you who you are, and that's that's your personal statement, and you know you have to you want to express that. But where they're gonna where it's gonna need to be, are you going to be able to work with people who don't share your faith, or don't have the same religion that you have, or whatever? And so that's the danger zone, and that's where questions may come in to your interview or whatever, um, because they don't want somebody who's going to be so dogmatic that they're not going to be kind and compassionate to people who don't believe the way they do. Um, and I think that I think the original point I think that Matt was making. I read so many personal statements where the student talks about they had a family member who had a medical experience, had something happened, or they were very ill, and they bashed the doctors that took care of them. It's like the doctor was rude or condescending or didn't help our family, and blah blah blah. And that's you don't want to just want who's reading your personal statement. They're all doctors, right? So you don't want anybody to kind of get defensive about their profession or their field. And so you just want to be cautious about things like that. First of all, you were 15 or 16 years old. Do you really have an understanding of what's happening? And so what we saw and felt at that age may not necessarily have been an accurate portrayal. And so the better way to say that is I saw the importance that how my family needed support and help from medical professionals, and I want to be that kind of professional rather than talking about the ones you encountered who weren't. I think is a better option for that.
Right.
One more. How should we address personal medical struggles?
I mean, I might need some more clarity on that. I don't know if they mean like they're, Robbie, do you know what they're asking there?
Um, I, I mean, I'm assuming that you have a medical condition that impacts you, and that should you talk about that? You know, I I think that goes back to that makes you you and you unique, and again, um, from a positive perspective, I'm overcoming this situation, this medical condition. I'm a survivor. I have gotten through it. It hasn't hindered me in pursuing my dream to become a medical professional. And I feel like because I've had my own experiences as a patient, I'm going to be much more compassionate and empathetic, and I'm really going to understand from the perspective of a patient much more clearly. So in that situation, that's how you want to frame it. You have to be able to perform the duties of a physician, and so you don't want to give the impression that you're not mentally or physically or able to do that. But having been a patient is a great insight into what you need in a physician, and so that's going to obviously be very important to you as you become a doctor. How the person feels who's sitting across from you, and what you needed from the physician, and so I think that is a big positive. I usually talk about that when I write letters if somebody mentions it in their personal statement, because I think that's a big thing, that you know what it's like, and what a patient is feeling, and that's something that somebody can't learn. You just have to experience that.
Yeah, yeah, and I know they sound like Robbie, you were answering the question right. Saw that in the chat, and yeah, I think just Robbie had said honesty is the best policy, but no, honesty isn't telling everyone everything you possibly can think of. Honesty is not deceiving and not lying. So you don't have to. When I mentioned that DUI example, you don't have to bring it up. Just know, hey, would it look better for me to talk about this because you're going to see it on a background check, but maybe there's something, maybe there's a medical thing you don't want to share about and they wouldn't know about. You don't have to bring it up. So you're in your personal statement, you're able to bring up whatever you want to bring up to make yourself, show why you should be a physician. Now, obviously, I think Robbie talked about, being able to perform the duties. There might be some sort of medical condition that maybe, they would notice or see in the interview that maybe you'd want to address. I'll give this extreme example, but my siblings are veterinarians, and my brother went to vet school with a girl. She actually, her arm, she doesn't have, her arm is cut off from here up on each, um, on both her arms. And so she had to apply 3 times. She had to send videos. She actually has better handwriting than my brother. She's able to write with her holding in her arm like this. But she's sending videos of her doing surgery, her suturing, her performing all the videos as a veterinarian. And now she's working as a shelter veterinarian. And so obviously that was an extreme example. They're going to notice, her medical challenges, but then she was able to show those in a way that she was actually able to perform the duties. So that's an extreme example, but you definitely just want to think about, is this going to help make me look better, or you know what, I don't have to bring this up right now. I'm going to talk about some other things. You know, would you agree with that, Robbie?
Yeah, yeah, it's like, why are you telling them that? What do you want them to do with the information? And how has this situation impacted your journey towards dental school, medical school, whatever?
Awesome. So is that all the questions for now? We'll go to the next
Yeah,
slide. Okay, so before we look at an example of a personal statement, I just have a few more tips just to remind you, because that was a lot of information. The first one is to have fun and be yourself. You know, definitely try to have fun with this personal statement. It shouldn't be this stressor that you're cramming to do, or it shouldn't be this sort of you're trying to find the right answer. Like I said, I know you science and math folk are looking for, 2 + 2 = 4. What's the four? And this is a little artsier, right? It's a little more creative minded, and you're having trouble, right? But share about you, have fun. You're an expert on yourself, and so really do encourage you. To go take a walk, think about what got you interested in the profession. Read some blogs and articles. Ask families and friends what they think of you. Read other statements. So definitely encourage you. And so we are going to do that right now. I'm just going to pull up a U.S. news article, actually, so it's not one that I is everyone seeing this website okay?
yeah,
So this obviously this is one I wrote. I'm not necessarily endorsing these, but this is just for you. You can access this on your own, but I just want to show an example, because we've talked a lot about personal statements, but it's kind of like if we talk a lot about football, we want to actually look at a football and see some guys play it. So this is kind of us doing that, right? It's us looking at that football game, watching it, and see what happens. So like I said, this isn't a perfect personal statement, but it's one that, multiple med school admissions committees said they enjoyed. And, you'll just see an example of some of the things like a good hook and that sort of thing. So I'm going to read this out loud, and you can just kind of see a little bit about it. And so this was a statement. They said, "My story begins at the age of 6. I'm dressed in a tiny suit with a miniature cello, the perfect size for a doll. It is the debut of the Aloha Trio. I'm on the cello, and my 2 older sisters are on violin and flute. My mother describes it as a way of sharing our Hawaiian spirit of aloha with a deserving audience. I think of it as torture." So you can just, to pause here, you can see like they're sharing a story. You can see how it's interesting. And they're talking about the cello. And so, for lack of time, I'll go down to the third paragraph, because they're wrapping up in this story about playing the cello, and then they say in the third paragraph, "And then it happens. Lib falls in the shower and sustains a hip injury. Her health takes a turn for the worse, and doctors say her time is limited. She fights for several months, but it is no use. We visit her in the hospital, but I do not recognize the woman I see. She is frail and slow. She can barely form words. In the tiny room, I do the only thing I can for Grandma Lib. I sing." So you can start to see just some of the things that here it's capturing you. It's interesting. They're talking about their life, and this is an example of one where someone maybe shares one big story, um, and so they're talking about singing. And you're wondering, what does this have to do with medicine? But they do a great job in this last paragraph before we go to the second page right here. They say, down at the bottom, "But what does this have to do with medicine? A singer, after all, heals with melodies, not antibiotics or operations. Yet it was my singing that first sparked my interest in medicine. And after a decade of seeing my voice bring some small measure of joy or peace to so many members of my audiences, I need more. I want to continue to bring joy and peace. I will continue to sing." And so they're talking about this story, who they are. It's unique. It's interesting. They tie it to medicine, and then they talk about their experience. So you'll see um, down here at the very bottom, they say that last sentence. "So I begin the summer after my freshman year. I volunteer each week at Mobile Med, a mobile clinic for the uninsured individuals of Maryland." And they don't then share their stats about how many hours they did, or that they talk about a story again. They say, "The van is cramped and hot, but I feel right at home. I enjoy speaking with the patients, joking with them while they wait. I use my Spanish." So they're throwing in another skill, translating. And so they talk about all this, and then you can kind of see their close here of their confidence and not arrogance. You see, starting with "My experience. My experience volunteering and performing has shown me the value of working with underserved populations." So you see, they brought up the underserved. Singing around the world has taught me in a small way how to communicate with audiences regardless of their backgrounds. I will use what I have learned from performing to connect with my patients, and I look forward to working with people from all walks of life on a daily basis. What began as a reluctant ability to sing has since transformed into a passion for music. What began with Grandma Lib has taken me across the country and around the world. And what began as a gradual realization that my songs could uplift or restore has turned into a deep held desire to dedicate my life to healing in every way I know how. So I know that was a quick flyover. I encourage you, I can post this article in here. Um, but this just gives you an example of some of the things I mentioned. It's interesting. It kind of captures you. They're not repeating a resume. They're sharing a story. They're showing why they want to go into medicine, but they're also showing they have the skills to go into medicine. So that was one example. Before I maybe go to another one, I do want to pause for questions here to see if you have any questions about this statement or about maybe this sparked a question you had.
Nothing so far.
All right, awesome. So like I said, this is one way to do it. It's kind of a big story. We're gonna look at this other one they have, which is a little bit different. And I really do encourage you to read these on your own time. And of course, if you're dental, we're going to briefly look at a dental one as well. But I just want to give you some flyovers so you don't think it has to be just like one. So here's another one. Notice the intro. My first patient was a man in his 60s who fell down a few stairs at the Baton Rouge hockey complex. His foot slipped out from under him while climbing the concrete steps, and he smashed his knee and elbow in the process. As a newly certified EMT, it was the first time I was responsible for another's health. Though numerous EMTs stood throughout the room acting as both a source of evaluation and a safety net, he was my patient. So you see, it's like, wow, like this person is their first patient ever. And it's this guy that slipped and he's my patient. And so then they kind of go into this story, right? When asking if he needed to go to the hospital, he looked to me. He trusted me to use my knowledge and experience to decide what was best for his health. Nothing in classes or books had prepared me for that feeling. It was the humbling realization that even medical providers don't always have the right answer, and the recognition of the role I had in my patient's overall health. Don't look at that, don't. We don't like that contraction. In that moment, I realized although it was a feeling heavy responsibility, it was also one I couldn't imagine giving up. I want to highlight that last sentence because it shows, when you write your personal statement, you don't just want to act like, man, being a physician, being a dentist, being an optometrist, it's all rainbows and butterflies. It's going to be the good life. It's going to be easy. This person is showing, wow, I was in a moment where I had to make a hard medical decision, and I was realizing how heavy that responsibility is, but also I want that. And these are going to be physicians reading this saying, wow, that is what my day is like. And it seems like this person really knows what they're getting themselves into and is ready for that. So, but you see, they didn't, now they're switching to another story. So, after almost a year later, I visited Haiti. So you see now they're sharing different experiences, so you can share multiple experiences in this or do one big one. And they talked about working with Project MetaShare. You could share about a mission trip. And so they talked all about this. And that's what those two paragraphs are about. And what it was like. You can see just kind of in the middle of the paragraph, I struggled to hold back tears after the pediatrician determined that if the baby stopped breathing, we would no longer resuscitate. I will never forget the look of devastation on the father's face as he learned what this meant. As he learned that this meant he would disconnect his baby from the monitors and let him hold his son while he died. So once again, that's serious, and they're recognizing if they go into medicine, at least that type of medicine, it's going to be hard. But what changed them from this experience? And so you could see then, if you skip down to the second to last paragraph, you see after returning home from Haiti, I realized I couldn't go back couldn't go back to the way things used to be. I sat in my rowing coach's office and signed away my full scholarship and my spot in the first boat because I could not imagine a week without medicine. Tears spotted the paperwork as I left one passion behind to fully and wholeheartedly pursue another. That might seem dramatic, if they didn't actually cry, that would be lying. But if you actually cried, you could talk about it, and this is moving. It's like, wow, this person wants to be a physician so bad that they literally gave up their rowing scholarship. So, I want us to skip ahead to the end of this here, just to kind of show how this finishes, right? So, they're talking about, hospitals have helped them, see that responsibility, yada, yada, yada. But then this last paragraph is that's once again, they're showing what they're getting into. I aspire to be a physician because I want the long nights, the tough choices, and to serve patients. I value the opportunity to be a part of and lead a team entrusted with the lives of others. I want to advocate for my patients, work for better health, and heal. Working for and with physicians has allowed me the opportunity to not only affirm that I want to be a physician, but resolve why. My first patient, see, they're linking the whole thing like a baseball. They're reminding you of that first patient at the hockey complex. Taught me the responsibility a provider has for the patient. Haiti showed me this, and working with ER staff showed me this. And then this last sentence you're going to remember: health has profound lasting effect on patients' lives, and for this reason I look forward to embracing and dedicating myself to a lifelong career in medicine. I mean, doesn't that capture you? You're just like, yeah, like I want this person to be the guy, that's there over me in the ER making those decisions. So those are two very different statements. I'll post this in the chat. But before we move to the last example, is there any other questions?
Not yet.
All right, let me put this. This is a medical one, but it of course can apply to dentistry, optometry, and so I'm just bringing up a dental one right here. And this actually is one where someone talks about a medical experience, so it might be that actually maybe impair them a little bit. So this might be good. So here we go. This is a dental one, right? Most toddlers stop thumb sucking by the age of 3. So it's like the opening thing's like, all right, this is interesting. They're just saying this like, okay, what did this person? Are they still sucking their thumb? So I stopped sucking. I stopped thumb sucking at age 15 on the very day the orthodontist strapped wires across my teeth, leaving me with the shiny metallic mouth of an adolescent brace face. So that sentence, while they're being a little vulnerable, they're also showing they've spent some time with dentists and orthodontists, and they use some good language there to help you imagine what they went through there. And they said, I must have been an exception among my peers, for I had been eagerly awaiting braces for several years. So they're talking about this. And so then even I was thrilled my parents were finally able to afford orthodontic treatment. Just, they shared this is a struggle for us financially, but they really brought it into dentistry, orthodontics right here. So they said by the senior year, the orthodontic treatment was completed. Both my prognatism and lisp were reduced, and speech became a natural task instead of an excruciating self-conscious process. So they talked about, look, in the first paragraph, I kind of skipped over it, but they mentioned that, years of nightly thumb sucking left them with a speech impediment. They weren't able to speak as well, and it was really challenging. But then, they came down here and said, look, that's fixed now. And, they go into this next, they say, my decision to pursue dentistry is a result of a long and thoughtful process. I didn't think about this, last night. I entered Duke with the intention of becoming a physician. And then they talked about dentistry, right? This quote here, quotes can be great if it really ties in. Your vocation is where your greatest desire meets a great need. And then, they go on and talk about some of their experience. I started volunteering at the Missions of Mercy dental clinics when I arrived back at the start of the semester. The clinics provide day-long free treatment. My first experience was watching and helping a full mouth extraction as I passed instruments to the dentist. So they're not just sharing stats, they're sharing a story about it. And they talked about, I realized there was a great need for dental care, especially among low-income families. So there's kind of a question earlier. And so finally, this last paragraph is important. They say, subsequently, I have enrolled in an osteology and anatomy class and have discovered that I thoroughly enjoy learning about bones, that my love for sketching is useful in visualizing bone articulation. So they're just saying, look, I have these skills, I have these interests, I've read enough about the field that I know, like, these are dentists reading this saying, wow, this person, knows their stuff. Additionally, my interest in dental structure, as well as my past with prognatism and speech impediments, led me to develop an independent study project on oral maxillofacial structure, form, and function in primates. It's like, wow, they're actually, they're dropping a quick sentence about something huge they're doing. And then it's refreshing to be able to concentrate. Sorry, I lost my spot. On an area of particular academic interest, the oral structure. And then this last sentence right here. I am fully confident that a career in dentistry is right for me, right? They're not arrogance, they're confidence. If my greatest desires are to provide pain relief, to develop patient relationships, to utilize creativity and working with my hands, and to provide care for others. And if there's a great need for good medical care, then my dentistry is indeed my vocation. And they link back to that quote. And so here you're not asking, man, why didn't this person go into, if they want to help people, why didn't they become a teacher? You know exactly why they want to be a dentist, and they've actually gotten involved in it. So I'm done with the presentation now. It is 6 o'clock. You're welcome to leave, but I do want to, pause for any more questions anyone has about um, those last examples we went through, or anything else in the discussion. There's also a QR code you could use, which is also on our website. It's just a link to more personal statement resources.